sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.
Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us.
Always a pleasure to be back.
So today we're going to be looking into the resignation of Denise Cheung.
Oh, yeah?
Top federal prosecutor.
Big story.
Huge story, yeah. And we're going to be taking most of our information today from an Al Jazeera article published on February 18th, 2025, just a couple days ago.
Very recent.
And it really digs into some pretty serious allegations against the Trump administration.
Yeah, and you know what's really fascinating about this is that this might not be an isolated incident.
Oh, really?
This resignation, we could be looking at a much bigger pattern of political interference.
Within the Justice Department?
Exactly.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which is
Yeah, that's a big deal.
That's a big deal, yeah.
Okay, so let's start with the basics then. Who is Denise Cheung, and what exactly led her to resign?
Okay, so Denise Cheung was the head of the criminal division of the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia.
Okay.
She had a really long and distinguished career, 24 years in public service.
Wow.
So basically, she was overseeing federal criminal investigations in D.C.
So pretty high-profile position.
Yeah, very important.
Yeah. Okay, so what kind of pressure was she facing, and from who?
So according to the Al Jazeera article, Cheung was asked to launch a grand jury investigation into a contract that was awarded during the Biden administration.
Okay.
And a grand jury investigation, that's when a group of citizens, they decide whether there's enough evidence to formally charge someone with a crime.
Gotcha.
But here's where it gets kind of interesting.
Okay.
Cheung, she reportedly didn't find any evidence to justify this investigation, but she was still pressured to pursue it.
Pressured by who, though? The article mentions Ed Martin, right?
Yes, Ed Martin.
He's got some interesting connections.
Yeah, so at the time, Ed Martin was the interim head of the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C.
Okay.
He was a Trump appointee with some ties to far-right groups.
Oh, wow.
He was even involved in raising money for the January 6th rioters and organizing those Stop the Steal rallies.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
So we've got a Trump-appointed official who's connected to far-right groups pressuring a career prosecutor to investigate a contract given during the Biden administration, even though there's no evidence.
Right.
I mean, some people might say that Martin was just trying to, uncover corruption, but with his background and the fact that there's no evidence, it does make you wonder if his motives were really all about, upholding the law.
Yeah, that's the big question here, right? Was this legitimate law enforcement, or was there a political agenda going on?
Yeah.
And it gets even more complicated.
Oh, how so?
Because the article says Cheung wasn't just asked to open an investigation. She was also pressured to freeze assets
Whoa, really?
related to the contract.
Wow. Okay, so before there were even any charges, they wanted to freeze assets.
Yeah.
That's pretty aggressive.
It is.
So what did Cheung do?
Well, she pushed back.
Good for her.
She argued there just wasn't enough evidence to justify taking such drastic action. But the pressure kept coming, and eventually she felt like she had no other choice but to resign.
Oh, wow.
And in her resignation letter, she mentioned her commitment to upholding the law and her oath to the Constitution.
So she's basically saying, I'm not going to compromise my ethics for this.
Basically.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's a highly respected prosecutor with more than 20 years of experience. That's a pretty strong message, I think.
Definitely. It makes you wonder what's going on in the Justice Department under Trump if someone like Denise Cheung feels like she has to resign.
Yeah, that's a great point. And this is where I think it's important to zoom out and look at the big picture, because her resignation, this wasn't just a one-time thing.
Right.
The article actually mentions a number of other resignations within the Justice Department that raise a lot of the same concerns about political interference.
Absolutely. And just last week, we saw at least 7 other Justice Department lawyers resigning.
Oh, really? Why is that? What happened?
They refused to drop corruption charges against the New York City Mayor Eric Adams.
That's interesting. Why would they refuse to drop the charges? Was there something off about the case?
Well, it seems like the decision to drop the charges came after Trump and Adams reconciled.
Oh, okay.
Several of the lawyers who resigned, they said they thought the decision was politically motivated.
Not based on the evidence.
Exactly. They felt like they were being asked to compromise their ethics for political reasons, and they just weren't willing to do that.
Wow. So we have at least 8 lawyers resigning in protest of what they see as political interference in legal matters.
Yeah.
It seems like more than just a coincidence at this point.
It does.
So what other cases are we looking at here?
Well, there's also the case of Michelle King.
Okay.
She was the acting commissioner of the Social Security Administration, and she resigned over attempts by the Department of Government Efficiency to access sensitive personal information.
Oh, wow. So this is expanding beyond just the Justice Department now.
Yeah, it is. And it raises concerns about possible disregard for privacy and, the potential for people in power to abuse their access to information.
Okay, so we've got a third resignation this time. It's not even in the Justice Department, it's in the Social Security Administration. And again, we're seeing concerns about inappropriate access to information and maybe even disregard for established procedures.
Exactly.
So we're seeing a pattern here, and it's not just about these specific cases anymore. It's about the integrity of the system itself.
Right. And it really makes you think about the kind of message this sends to other people who work in these institutions.
Yeah, like if this is happening at the top, what's happening lower down?
Right. It can create this chilling effect where experienced professionals, they're being pressured to compromise their ethics, or they're forced out for refusing to do so, and it makes other people hesitant to speak up
Yeah, for sure.
because they're afraid of retaliation or that their careers are at stake.
That's a really good point, and this goes beyond just the people who are directly involved, too.
Yeah, it does.
What about how the public sees these institutions?
Right.
If people start to think that the justice system or the Social Security Administration are being used for political game, that's a huge problem.
Absolutely. Public trust is so important for these institutions to work well. If people lose faith in the fairness of the system, it weakens the whole idea of the rule of law.
Yeah, why would anyone cooperate with law enforcement or trust that their personal information is being handled responsibly if they think the whole system is rigged?
Exactly.
And it also makes you wonder about who's being chosen to fill these positions now. If all these experienced professionals are being pushed out, are they being replaced with people who are basically yes men?
That's a real possibility. We might see this shift where loyalty becomes more important than competence.
And that's a scary thought.
Yeah, it would just further damage the integrity and effectiveness of these institutions.
Okay, so we've established that there's something really concerning going on here, and it has serious consequences for both the individuals and the institutions themselves. But let's step back for a second and consider the context. This is happening under the Trump administration, which, let's face it, hasn't exactly been known for being controversy-free.
True.
So how does all of this fit into the bigger picture?
Well, some people would argue that this is part of a larger trend of the Trump administration trying to control institutions that are meant to be independent. We've seen similar worries about other agencies, too, and it really makes you question the whole idea of separation of powers and the checks and balances that are supposed to prevent abuse of power.
It's like there's a difference between setting policy and interfering with how these agencies work on a daily basis in a way that benefits a specific political agenda.
Exactly.
And that's where things start to get really worrying, because if those in power are willing to use these institutions for their own gain, what can regular people do about it?
Well, this is where things like a free and independent press and a strong civil society and engaged citizens become so important. We need watchdogs who can hold those in power accountable, and we need people who are informed and willing to speak up when they see something wrong.
And that brings us to the main question. What happens now? We have these resignations, these allegations, but what can actually be done to fix this and prevent it from happening again?
There are a few possibilities. Congress could launch investigations. There could be legal challenges. And of course, there's always public opinion.
Right.
But ultimately, it comes down to whether those in power are held responsible for their actions.
Accountability, that's the key word here.
Definitely.
It's not about punishing people. It's about sending a message that these institutions, they're not political toys. They serve the public, and the people who work in them need to be able to do their jobs without worry about political pressure.
Absolutely. And to rebuild trust, it's going to take more than just words. It's going to take real actions that show a commitment to transparency, accountability, and the rule of law.
We haven't even touched on Trump's reaction to all of this. He must have said something about these serious accusations, right?
Well, he did address King's resignation.
Okay.
And not really in the way you might expect.
Oh, how so?
Instead of offering any evidence to refute the allegations, he kind of implied that King didn't really resign on her own.
Oh, wow.
And then he went on to accuse the Social Security Administration of massive fraud.
It sounds like he's deflecting,
It does seem that way.
trying to change the subject rather than actually address the accusations.
Yeah, and that's a pretty common tactic used by people who want to avoid taking responsibility.
Yeah, for sure. And we need to be aware of these tactics so we can see through them and demand real answers.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've covered a lot today. We've looked at the specifics of the resignations, talked about the possible consequences for the people and the institutions, and discussed how all of this fits into the way the Trump administration operates.
Yeah, we've also highlighted how important accountability and transparency are, and how important it is for citizens to be involved in upholding the rule of law.
But there's one more aspect to this story that I think is worth exploring. It goes beyond just the political interference and makes you think about the whole idea of justice itself.
Definitely. It really gets to the heart of the matter, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if these allegations are true, what does that say about our ability to, even uphold the rule of law?
It really undermines the whole system.
Yeah.
If the people who are supposed to be upholding the law are being pressured to do things that are unethical or even illegal,
Okay, right.
then the whole system's in jeopardy.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder who's actually in control.
Exactly.
Is justice really blind, or is it just being manipulated to help the powerful?
It's a big question.
Yeah, it really is. It reminds me of that saying, power tends to corrupt and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
If there aren't any checks and balances, if there's no accountability, then it's just too tempting for people to abuse their power.
Yeah, for their own personal gain or to push their political agenda.
Exactly. And that's why I think these resignations are so important. It shows that there are still people in these institutions who are willing to stand up for what's right, even if it means putting their careers on the line.
It's really encouraging to see.
Yeah, it is. It's a reminder that the system is only as good as the people who are part of it.
That's true.
And if those people are silenced or pushed out, the system starts to fall apart.
Absolutely. It's a wake-up call for all of us.
Yeah, for sure. So we've talked about the potential consequences for the individuals involved and for the institutions. Right. And we've talked about how all of this fits into the Trump administration's way of doing things. And we've talked about how important accountability and transparency are and how crucial it is for citizens to be engaged.
Yeah, to hold those in power accountable.
But I think there's one more layer to this that's worth exploring.
Okay.
It goes beyond just the allegations of political interference. And it makes you question the very idea of justice itself.
That's a deep one.
Yeah, so we've talked about, the potential consequences for the people involved and for the institutions themselves.
Right.
But what about justice, like as a concept? I mean, if these allegations are true, what does it say about our ability to even uphold the rule of law and make sure everyone's treated fairly?
That's really the core issue right at the heart of it.
Yeah.
I mean, if the people who are supposed to be upholding the law are being pressured to act in ways that are unethical or even illegal, it really jeopardizes the entire system.
Makes you wonder who's really in charge.
Exactly.
It's like, is a justice really blind, or is it just a tool for the powerful?
It's a disturbing thought.
It really is. It makes me think of that saying, power tends to corrupt and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic.
Like, if there are no checks and balances, if people in power aren't held accountable, then it's just too tempting to abuse that power.
To use it for personal gain or to advance a political agenda.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think these resignations are so important.
I agree.
They're a sign that there are still people within these institutions who are willing to stand up for what they believe in. Even if it means risking their careers.
Yeah, they're putting their principles above their own self-interest.
Exactly. It's a good reminder that the system is only as good as the people who are part of it.
That's true.
And if those people are silenced or pushed aside or forced out, then the system itself starts to crumble.
It's a stark warning.
Yeah, it really is. All of this is pretty disheartening,
Yeah, it's heavy stuff.
We're talking about the foundations of our society here, the principles of fairness and justice that everyone should be entitled to.
Right.
So if those principles are being eroded, where does that leave us? What can we do to protect our democracy and make sure that justice prevails?
Well, I think it starts with awareness,
Okay.
by understanding what's at stake and recognizing the patterns of behavior and seeing through the attempts to deflect and distract.
Right.
We can start to push back against these trends.
So knowledge is power.
Yeah.
We need to stay informed
Yeah.
and have these important conversations
Yeah.
and support the organizations that are working to protect our institutions.
Yes, and we need to hold our elected officials accountable.
Right.
Demand transparency, demand answers, and don't let them get away with vague statements or empty promises.
And of course, voting is crucial.
Absolutely.
We need to elect leaders who understand how important these institutions are, who respect the rule of law, and who are committed to serving the public good.
Leaders with integrity.
Exactly. This deep dive has uncovered some pretty disturbing stuff.
Yeah, it has.
But it's also a reminder that we have power as citizens. If we stay vigilant and engaged and speak up,
Our voices matter.
we can help to ensure that justice prevails and that our democracy stays strong.
I think that's a great point to end on.
Yeah, I think so too. This has been a really heavy topic,
It has.
but an important one. And to all our listeners out here, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking those tough questions, keep searching for the truth, and never stop believing in the power of your own voice. We'll see you next time.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have a ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're a puppy dog.